The last episode that went to air, which I believe was called Butt Sniffers, James Fosdyke doing amazing artwork on that. You may have noticed that my voice sounded strange on that. And the reason my voice sounded strange, well, I didn't know what the problem was. I just knew that I had a bunch of recordings that I'd done that week that all fucking sucked. And I was getting really stressed out and freaking out because I unplugged and replugged everything and I could not work out what was going on. Now, our wonderful producer, Mike, our new Mike.
Mike
the third. Mike the third.
Well, it's very much, when it comes to producers for Tofop, basically we are like Lisa Simpson naming cats. It's like Snowball 1, 2, and 3. One mic goes down, we bring in another mic. Now, hang on. Is this a mic-related issue that you're about to explain?
Well, I had to jump on a call with Mike. He was going to be my technical support. And he was going to walk me through it. And so we looked at a bunch of possibilities and couldn't work it out. And then I called him back and this is what went down. Hey, mate.
Hi, mate. What's happening up there?
Yeah, we're not getting good sound. And I went back and I checked all the backups. I went to the Rodecaster. That was still sounding crap as well. I unplugged and replugged everything in, restarted everything. But I discovered what the problem is. I wasn't speaking into the right side of the microphone.
It happens.
More often than you realize on this show.
Oh, no. Are you serious?
I mean, everyone's doing nostalgia, bait. You saw the new Flash trailer. They put Batman like Michael Keaton. It's like a bit of nostalgia. Mate, I could not figure out for the life of me why the fuck, just for 1 week, the podcasts that I'd done all sounded terrible, all sounded really roomy. You could hear me. And even on the Rodecaster, which is my interface, which is always like the purest sound, sounded fucked up. And then I realized, it's like, oh, you know what I did? I took off the pop filter and I readjusted the cradle that the mic sits in. And I guess when I put the mic back in, I screwed it in. And when you look at this particular brand, this is the NT1, the Rode NT1. Rode, very supportive of the show. Thank you very much. It has a little gold dot on the side you meant to talk into.
Because Rode know that the people who might be using their equipment are idiots and they need a little gold dot to know which bit to speak into. But it turns out that if you cover that up with the pop shield, you can't see that.
But it did make me think back when you and I in the first 30 eps or whatever, and the most common argument was like, what's fucking side of the microphone to talk to? And you were like, isn't there a button or a light or something that tells you what side of the microphone? Yeah, there is. Or Rode heard that and were like, I know how we can make a fortune.
Well, there always should be some sort of indication of which the correct side is. I think that they need to make it even more obvious than the little gold dot, though. Like, I mean, I would literally on that, because there's no reason, like, where you speak into on the microphone, they couldn't just write on that, speak into this side, like, or put an arrow into that. Like, it could be bigger than that. Or a
cartoon, in case you don't speak English. Just like a cartoon head, the mouth's open, and 3 lines coming out.
Right, yes, the international symbol for talking to this. A cartoon head with 3.
Piss in my open mouth. It could be one of two things. I guess maybe that's why they didn't use that pictograph.
I've got to be honest with you. Every time I go to do my podcast, I feel like pissing into somebody's mouth. I think I'm just getting this really subliminal image from doing. Yeah, okay, so that's old school. I mean, I think you're right. Embrace the nostalgia of it. This is, everyone got mad when Dylan went electric, and like podcasting has become, and it's good like that our podcasts are now on Listener, and it's really nice to be able to do things like play in that bit of audio that you just did there, Charlie. Something
slick, right?
Yeah, I know. It's very impressive to highlight something that was so unimpressive. But we live in this world now of things sounding slick, of sounding packaged. Maybe our competitive advantage. This podcast was a pioneer. This was a big podcast in the time when there were no other podcasts. And so maybe that's what we've got to do. We've got to return to the idea of this is what
people... the Amish.
Yeah.
With the Amish of podcasting. It's like we're stuck to... In fact, we should regress back to like... It wasn't before the H6. We had remember I ordered that thing off like eBay? It was like $80 or something. It was like a podcasting desk. It had like 54 sliders. It was the most cumbersome piece of shit. And that's what you and I And remember, like, we didn't even have like mic stands. You
No.
jammed your microphone between like books and shit.
Yeah.
Had to keep it upright. Maybe that's what we need to go.
We've got to go back to
our
basics.
roots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well-
I think that maybe that is like, the idea. I mean, you see it sometimes like with Ed Sheeran, right? Like Ed Sheeran's become this, started out busking, but like, got to that point where suddenly he was like appearing with a big band on stage and playing with other musicians. And people were like, that's actually not what we want to see, Ed Sheeran do. What we want to see Ed Sheeran do is, even if you're in a massive venue, we want to see you go out there with an acoustic guitar and a foot pedal and like do it all yourself, because that's the appeal. That's why you became popular in the first place. So maybe that's what we've got to do with Tofop. Like maybe we've been trying to advance into this new age, and it's never helped us. We've never been able to master, what the young people are into or what they're doing. Maybe we have to go the opposite and go backwards.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the irony of this whole thing is that when Mike got the audio, because he was the one who sort of, I sort of had vaguely, I did Josh Earl's podcast and sorry, 100% hits, which is fantastic. And apologies, Josh, I gave you shit sound. I had no idea. It would have just sounded like I did it through my Mac, my built-in speaker, which is incredibly unprofessional.
Because I listened to it the other day and I was like, why is Charlie's sound so bad on this podcast? That was literally my thought. I was like, oh, maybe Josh wasn't recording, like was just recording through Zoom or whatever, and Charlie didn't plug his mic. Even I, the person who knows nothing about sound quality on podcasts, was listening to that going, why does Charlie sound like he's in a bucket recording this?
Well, so Mike caught on to it, and he was like, look, we can fix it. Do you have like, I just want to check the WAV files, see what went wrong. And when we couldn't rescue that, he's like, it's fine. We can reconstruct it with
AI. Really?
And so he said, look, it'll sound a bit different. He said, you'll sound a bit sort of like
will.
Yeah, exactly. A bit robotic. He said, but I don't think the casual listener or, the casual podcast listener will know.
Everyone relax. This is Tofop.
Which I don't think was the case, because it definitely sounds, it sounds like me. It just sounds like, it just sounds like I'm in a weird room. Like it sounds like we've got a bad connection or a deeper, like I was going to say deeper connection. Well, we have a very deep connection, but like a weird Wi-Fi connection. But it just sort of was like, oh, okay, maybe what we should have done though, because what you're saying is like, just go back to basics. We don't try and disguise our flaws. We've never tried in the past. I should have put my foot down and said, Mike, you don't get the audience. That they would have, someone.
This podcast isn't about
just
AI taking over. This is actually the worst nightmare of this podcast, that the two of us could be replaced by AI. Don't you just introduce it into this relationship in this new, you're like, you know what? Yeah, hey, Charlie. You know what? You haven't been really sounding on mic recently. And me and my audio engineer and some AI spotted you from across the room. And we were wondering if you'd like to join our little polyamorous audio relationship.
Well, it kind of re-alerted me to the fact that, like, because I don't know if you're not on social media, so have you been seeing there's a bunch of deep fakes that have been coming out? Like this week alone, there's been an avalanche of them. One of them was Leonardo DiCaprio at the UN giving a speech, and then the AI mid-speech just swapped his voice to a different celebrity. So, it'd be like Robert Downey Jr., then it was like Bill Gates, and it was Steve Jobs, and it was pretty amazing. Like, it was just like, okay, I mean, if you were listening to it, because you could see the lips not quite matching, but if you're listening to it, you'd be like, all right. And then you probably say, well, there's like a Joe Biden doing some kind of like offensive rap song, all this kind of shit. And it's almost there. All of this research.
It's the great opportunity, by the way, if you are Joe Biden, to do a really offensive rap song, because no one's going to believe it. If you are one of these, you're like, this is completely unlikely. And Biden's like, this is my opportunity. I've always been a big NWA fan. I've always really wanted to say the N word. Obama said it all the time. He was allowed to. I was never allowed to. Everyone's going to think it's a deep fake, but it's actually just Joe in the studio with Dre.
I mean, if there was one rapper who would agree to be on the album, it's Snoop. Yeah. Like, Snoop has never turned down a collab with anyone. And he already did that kind of anti-Trump sort of music video. So maybe, do you reckon, would you be surprised to see Snoop Dogg and Joe Biden, not AI, but legit have released a single together.
That would not surprise me at all. Like,
No.
Snoop would do it absolutely, but I can imagine Biden, like, he's got some
Being
cred
savvy enough.
in that community, right? Like, I mean, his most famous partnership is with Obama. Like, I think he could easily translate that into being like, I'm going to hang out with Snoop. I'm going to do a single with Snoop. That makes a lot of sense to me, particularly if it was something that was related to a policy. Like, say they did a rap song together, but it was to like raise awareness of like, releasing criminals from jail who are in for pot, dealing or possession or something. Like, something that
it's
was
perfect.
Right? I think that would work.
Yeah, and it doesn't have it's going to have the cringe factor regardless.
Yeah.
But if you can make him self-aware enough about it, then you sort of get a pass mark. It's when it's earnest that you don't get a pass mark, right?
Yeah, that's right. No, it couldn't be earnest, but if it's got Snoop, it already comes with that sense of this isn't completely earnest, right? Like,
yeah. You're right. But how does he manage to Snoop traverse both worlds where he's both a credible artist but also the menu log guy? Like, has he just got to a point in his career where he's that big, that woven into our culture?
Yes. I mean, it's amazing, really, considering that he genuinely was involved in like the gangland, scene in, I mean, that whole scene in LA, like, I guess in both sides of America through like hip hop and people coming out of like really genuinely crime stricken neighborhoods and communities with criminal records, and like Snoop most famously for just getting high everywhere. Like, remember like a year ago at the Super Bowl, there's like photos of him just getting high at the Super Bowl. And then the next year it's like, hey, do you want to do a menu log ad? Like, that's how, like, that's the world we now live in. Can you imagine if 20 years ago you were like, hey, see that guy Snoop Dogg? He's going to be getting high at the halftime show at the Super Bowl and then be on every commercial on TV because apparently he's someone who can sell product.
Well, do you think he's maybe, because I was thinking he was an exception, but maybe in the era we live in now, that's more common to have like legitimate artists commercialize themselves or work in both worlds. Like, I saw an interview with some actress talking about, she was getting flack for all these ads she does on Instagram and stuff. And she was like, but if you look at like wages in the entertainment, they've come down. You don't get residuals like you used to when you do a TV show. I'm just trying to maximize my profile for however long it lasts. So you do notice that when you go to other countries and you see those George Clooney, like Nescafe commercials, or Julia Roberts is doing some ad in Japan or something like that. I guess it's not as unusual for a guy to, be taken seriously, but also do shitty ads.
I think we're well past that point that it's even in Japan or some foreign country. I think that used to be the case, that a Schwarzenegger or a Clooney would go to some other country and make ads and that nobody would ever see them or hear about them. But firstly, we don't live in that world anymore. You can't go anywhere in the world and people not find out about it. It's immediately on the internet and being shared all around the world. And I think because of that, they were like, well, maybe it's just, Super Bowl day, to mention that again, it really is that day where the ads are all filled with celebrities. There is no value to a celebrity anymore of not doing ads because the world is so controlled by the only business model that most things have is advertising. Like, we found it in podcasting. We've explored a whole bunch of different ways to try to pay for this thing. But at the end of the day, the only one that really tends to work is, well, two things: the support of your audience through Patreon and genuinely crowdsourcing things. And then the other one is advertising.
Are we the Snoop Dogs of podcasting, where we have the credibility because we've got the crowdfunding? Like, we're still connected to our roots,
to the
people
streets,
really dig us,
to our gang,
to the streets,
our Patreon subscribers, our Bloods, our Crips.
And then we also are taking fucking sponsors' dollars. Yeah, we'll take your fucking corporate money. Doesn't mean we're not cool. We'll still fucking record a podcast without speaking the right side of the microphone and fucking not apologize for it.
You're not going to change us, man.
We're still going to deliver the same subpar entertainment. Occasionally miss episodes. Forget what the numbering system is. Forget about things we've even talked about on the show before. You can't change us.
The wrong side of the microphone, though, is honestly one of those things that
I just came up in my head. I just saw our HBO doco series, The Wrong Side of the Microphone, the Tofop story. So I just saw the credits flash through my mind. I got happy for a second.
I mean, that's what it would have to be called. The wrong side of the microphone. It seems weird to me. Here's what I will say about the wrong side of the microphone. It seems weird to me because at the moment I'm talking into classic, old school, Shaw SM58s, I think they're called. Is that what they're called? And
Yep.
They're like the most classic of old microphones.
The most common, like, gigging musician microphone. You see at every pub and band room.
And there is no wrong side of this microphone. I mean, there'd be a wrong end if I like talked into the other end, but that's pretty obvious. It's attached to a cord. It would be hard to make that mistake. But I can turn this microphone around in a 360 circle, and there's not a point where I'm talking into the wrong bit of it. It seems weird to me that in this new world of this evolved technology, that if there's only one side of the microphone that you can talk into, why do they make both sides of the microphone look the same? Surely your microphone should have, like, on one side, a sort of like blacked out area that makes it completely. Now, there might be something to do with sound that you need to, but surely you should be able to design it so that one side is very obviously the one you speak into versus the other one not being it.
I mean, I'm sure there is a nerdy answer about, like, a condenser mic needs to have these particular dimensions and specs, and yours is like, I don't know, like an Omni mic or something like that.
I mean, they're all really good things for it to have, but none of those are helpful if the person isn't speaking into the right side of the microphone. You can have as many condensers and whatever as you want, but you need someone to talk into the bit that matters.
I mean, I kind of feel like if this was a buddy cop movie, like,
we're both the idiots.
No. Okay, let's if we're taking the sort of Tango and Cash, let's take a modern equivalent, Hobbs and Shaw, right?
So firstly, which one's Hobbs and which one's Shaw?
Oh, good question. I think the Rock is Hobbs.
Okay.
Yeah. The Rock is Hobbs, and Jason Statham is Shaw.
Okay, and in this analogy, are you Hobbs or Shaw?
I'm Shaw, and my reasoning is because in Hobbs and Shaw, Hobbs is set up as like an old school analog kind of dude, drives a pickup truck, does weights in the morning, uncomplicated, puts whiskey in with his Cheerios. And Deckard Shaw, I think it's Deckard Shaw, his name, whatever. Jason Statham. He's all high-tech Lamborghini, Nescafe, blah, blah, blah. So I have a collection of, like, high-tech condenser mics. Rode have supplied me very kindly with some. I've bought others myself. I've got the Bluetooth one when we're traveling and stuff. So I've got all these, like, highfalutin mics. You've just got old trusty fucking 58. SM58, you're old. That's your 6-shooter.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
None of these
fancy new guns. I've just got this old piece that I've been carrying around attached to my old H6 Zoom with the back of it and only one mic port that still works. But I'm just like, I've been carrying this for years and it's been serving me well. And guess what? I've never done? Talked into the wrong side of the microphone.
The only time you did was when I gave you the microphone, when I was in charge of, like, hey, speak into that microphone. Which side? I don't know. Just take a punt. To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/Tofop.